next one on the list. Now, this one's interesting
Burmese
because
harp.
I have not... Burmese harp. I've never seen it. I don't even... Why did that one make the list?
Well, it's a Japanese film, and it's based on a true... In Burma, at the end of the war, this Japanese soldier decided to stay behind and bury the dead soldiers, the Japanese, because the Burmese refused to do that. And, it's the whole idea of, they're not taking responsibility for burying our dead soldiers. In the Japanese culture, that's a real insult. That's considered very bad, not to bury the dead, particularly when the war's over. When you're fighting a war, okay, you're in the middle of a battle. Logistically, it's not pragmatic. But when the war's over, you excuse at that point in their culture. You see what I'm saying? And the fact that they weren't even willing to try and do it. So this Japanese soldier, he says, I'm going to take the responsibility. I'm going to travel across Burma. I'm going to find the Japanese soldiers' bodies, and I'm going to bury them all. Based on a true story, I will take the responsibility. I will bury them. And to me, it's the whole thing of he wants to do something to make things better. You see what I'm saying? And it's a powerful story. Great film.
All right. Well, one that didn't make the list, and I think I mentioned earlier, The Wizard of Oz in my film appreciation class, beating us, but one that was also given a lot of credit, but did not make Tyler's list. And I want explanation for why not Citizen Kane.
Well, I think that, I like Citizen Kane, but, when I saw Citizen Kane, I'd seen so many rip-offs of it by the time I saw it that it kind of lost the original impact that the movie had when it first came out. Don't get me wrong, Citizen Kane is a classic. It is a watermark film. But the thing is I personally didn't love the film. I liked it, I respected it, I enjoyed it, but to me, it wasn't one of my favorites. But I do make the distinction between, I have a list of favorite films that's very different from my list of best films. But, my favorite film of all time is actually The Warriors. With Michael Beck. Warriors, come out to play. But it's not. It's a cult classic. It's not a classic, but it's an very entertaining film. But Citizen Kane, I got to tell you, I think it's. I agree it's a classic, but I think it's somewhat overrated as a movie, and I think it's just been imitated too much to really appreciate it as much as when it first came out.
Well, speaking of imitation, this next question that I had is coming up with a good then original story. So I know that's hard to do, but how do you break through that barrier?
Well, basically, I try to draw from my own life. I try to draw from my own experiences, and I read a lot, and I study history a lot, and I try to find a story or an idea. One of the things I did was I read Michio Kaku's book on physics. What is it called? The Art of the Impossible, or I forget the exact title of it, or Understanding the Impossible, something like that. But in his book, he talks about things like time travel, and he talks about teleportation and various things like that. So I read the book, and I was like, well, what if we took a time travel scenario, and there's a war about to be fought, and a guy from the enemy side time travels back to his enemy to help his enemy out to win this war against his own people, because he feels it's morally imperative that they lose, his own side loses. To me, I was like, okay, we take some of the science elements and put like a moral element to it, actually have a story. So I wrote it up. It was called Saving Our Enemies. That was the title of the screenplay that I wrote. Now, a lot of people who read it, I think they had trouble getting it. Some of them didn't like it, but some people who read it, they did like it. But it was I'm willing to follow my face as a writer. I'll take risks. But basically, I do have a very creative imagination, but I look for my own life, and I try to read a lot on a wide variety of things. Always looking for ideas.
So yeah, that would be the next thing I was going to do. Books and having a command of the English language requires dictionary and thesauruses. So basically, just kind of give the folks watching a little bit of books that you look out for and how often you crack open the dictionary and the thesaurus. And
I won't just crack open Webster's dictionary. I try to look for technical dictionaries on a wide variety of subjects and read the dictionaries. Read them from cover to cover. So that, it's interesting because I was reading a dictionary on insurance terms, And I found out the word pilferage in the insurance industry means something different than what I understood it to mean. So, that because the way you use a word in a context could change the word itself. Pilferage in the insurance term means theft on the high seas, actually. But pilferage in general just means theft. But reading that, I'm like, oh, okay, my brain was clicking. Oh, that's something interesting. I didn't know that before. I know that now. I know how this word's used in a different context. So, but the thing is Sun Tzu, The Art of War. I like a book by Harlan Ellison. George Orwell, Ray Bradbury. I read their stuff, like their stuff quite a bit. I try to basically, figure out who the great writers are and the great books are, and just go down the list.
Very, hey, there you go. That's good advice. But what about the folks out there, post education after high school, maybe a course on it, some classes in college? Would there be any particular course or out there that maybe you could recommend?
Well, yeah, one of the ones was John Truby's course on writing. But it was funny because when I met with John, I met him in person, and we were talking about writing, and he actually said this to me. He said, "I can't teach you anything." He says because your writing is way more advanced than what I or any of my friends are doing, because I will break all the rules in order to tell a story. Because to me, it's like what Napoleon said: the only rule that counts is winning. And I think a lot of times, they have certain ideology. This works, that works. Sort of formula of doing things, and then it works most of the time. But then you run into the scenarios where it doesn't work. An example of that was the Spartans. The way they trained their soldiers, they trained them as infantrymen to close with shields and spears, but they didn't have any archers. And they fought the Athenians, and the Athenians had guys with shields and spears and archers backing them up. And they basically got clobbered. So it's one of those things where you got to be flexible in your thinking. And the Spartans surrendered to the Athenians, unheard of in their culture. I mean, it was just shocking. Absolutely. If you saw the movie 300, where they're saying, our choice is simple: retreat, surrender, or die here. And the Spartan commander said, well, then choice, because we don't retreat and we don't surrender. We're going to die here. That's our choice. We're going to fight him to the death. But getting back to my original point, it's about being flexible in your thinking. You just really have to say, the way I did it was I would just say, this is what I want to see. And I figured if I'm really passionate about it, someone else will want to see it too. And time, even though I was breaking all the existing rules of how you put a story together or a film together, I was still able to make it work.
What about going back to college? I have in my notes here that you did go back to college, that you did start taking some post, after, some courses and this and that. How did that go for you?
Well, it was interesting.